Welcome to the Woman's Cave. And you know what I love, right? I love when it says recording in progress. And yes, it's been forever since, excuse me. I immediately started talking and my lunch was like, excuse me. I have something to say. So I apologize for that. It didn't even have that much to say. It wasn't that interesting. It was just that I'd like to exit now. No one cared. It could have left quietly. A lady never talks about that. I am so sorry, y'all. I am Winona, one of the anti-thought ladies, and I'm kind of proud of myself for saying that at the beginning, because normally I say that at the end, and I'm like, wait, I could have done that at the beginning. It would have sounded professional. And there is no Jay today. That's why I'm up here acting out and talking about my lunch quietly. Was like, hello, may I leave here now? May I leave? Okay, there's no segue for jumping into like the professional part. So let's just go ahead and dive in like it's a cool pool on an August day. Oh wait, no, now it's September, so never mind. It doesn't even, that's not even a fitting analogy. We wrote books. Yeah. Literary life guides with pop poetry. Oh, Jane would be so proud. I remember to say that. High five to me. They are, and I thought divorce was bad, and I thought being grown up was easy. If only I were me, a memoir in verse. Widow's web, widow's debt, foreign coffee. And I think that's it. Let me go through it one more time. And I thought divorce was bad, and I thought being grown up was easy. If only I were me, widow's web, widow's debt, and foreign coffee. Yes! It's all 6. So you know what time this is. This is that PBS time of the thing where I said we have 6 books because it goes with our sign language. So we have 6 books. And if you go to our website, you will see the other 11 books. And all together, y'all, 6 plus 11 equals 17 books.
Did you just say 6 plus 11?
Yes, that was Jade from like 2 rooms away from the studio eating sweet tarts going,
Hey, I have to do office work today.
She does, because we have a lot of stuff going on. And if you didn't understand what she said we have to do office work. It is, I'm happy that she's doing it because it's paper. You can see our 17 books on www.andithoughladies.com. And since Jade is not officially here, I'm going to do it one more time like I'm a car salesman because you know how much I love to do it. It's www.andithoughladies.com. Man, that gives you an energy kick every time. But you're not here to hear about me. You're here to hear about our wonderful guests. Wonderful guests, would you like to introduce yourself? I'm going to eat a sweet tart now.
Okay. Hi, I'm Connie Mayo, and I am the author of 2 books, and I'm going to take my inspiration from you guys. I know you hold up your books sometimes, so I brought my books to hold up. So I am the author of The Island of Worthy Boys, historical fiction published in 2015. But more recently, I am the author of The Sharp Edge of Mercy, which was just published in May. So these are both historical novels, and that's my jam.
Okay, that was a huge jump, by the way. Historical fiction for like guys, and then historical fiction about nursing. I'm sorry, is there a connection in your life that made you go between these 2 time periods to write about?
Yeah. So it's sort of the same time period, but I do sort of think of, and it's maybe a coincidence that this is my blue book, which is about boys, and this is my, it's not really pink, but a more of my girl book. But they're both set around the turn of the century, both in urban centers, one in Boston and one in Manhattan. And they both deal with young protagonists, but they're really written for an adult audience, which is something I really like to do, and something that I think is very confusing to some people, especially the protagonists of the first book are pretty young. And a lot of people were like, is this a YA book? And the answer was, no, I don't think so. So that was a little confusing. But they are similar in that they're set at the turn of the century.
How much research goes into writing either of those books?
I want to say lots. People have sometimes asked me like, well, when do you stop researching? The answer is you sort of don't stop researching until you stop writing, but there's a huge amount of research at the beginning. And then at some point you sort of start writing, but you're still researching. People some writers, when they come across something, they're in the middle of their book, and they come across something where they don't know the answer and they have to do some research, they leave like a little, note for themselves and they just keep going. And I cannot do that. I have to stop and I have to open a Google tab and I need to figure it out right there, even if it takes me like, another 3 hours to figure out. My best example of this is in the first book, there's a scene where the youngish, sort of adolescent boys are in the room with this woman who is a prostitute. And I had to know, would she wear a corset or not? And so I had to stop and I had to research, would prostitutes in Boston at the turn of the century be wearing corsets, and wouldn't that sort of interfere with their work and so forth? And 3 hours later, I had my answer, which is sometimes. So, but that's an example of like, I can't just leave like an open hole and keep going. And other authors can do that, but I can't.
Neither can I. I thoroughly understand. Like, if I'm writing, it has to be answered right then. Because if I don't answer it, honestly, I'm gonna write around the fact.
Yep.
It's gonna be like, so they were there, and her hair and her face, and I'm not describing anything else because I didn't do the research. So, yep. But I just want to say this one thing, and yes, it's a gloat point, but I am a narcissist, so hold on. I knew the answer to that question off the bat.
You did.
Yeah. And now I'm like, why? Oh my goodness. So like I believe they said, like, I was reading an article and they said that they would lace up for a really important client that specifically liked lace.
Right.
That specifically wanted to like do like fantasies with that.
Right.
Anyway, that's what I read. And why I know that, I have no idea, because I don't write about it.
I have an excuse and you do not.
No, I do not have an excuse at all. Oh my goodness. So like, do you find yourself like, even when you're not writing, because I know I do this, still reading articles about that time period, just like out of kicks and giggles? You're not gonna, like, I may use it, I may not use it, but I mean, why not have the facts?
Right. Well, the amount of research that you do and this stuff you learn, you only can really fit like some of it in your book. And if you're trying to put all of your stuff in there, you're not being a very good writer, because that's called info dump. Readers hate it. They hate when an author is putting in some fact about some building in Boston or in New York or whatever, and it's not really relevant, but you're like Miss Smarty Pants and you want to brag that you know this very bad. So I try to watch myself, but yeah, I know a lot of things that I sort of wish that I could have found a home for in my books, and I can't. And now I still am interested. As you said, I'm still interested if there's an article about cancer treatment at the turn of the century. I'm totally reading it, even though I already finished the book, but I'm reading it.
Okay, now I want to know where the article is. And no, I don't even need to know. Random facts. Okay, here's one more question about research, and that's where I'm done, and we're going to talk about for real stuff.
Okay.
Like, your writing journey and process, stuff that's real, people want to know about. But for right now, do you find a home for those tidbits of facts in your conversations, though?
If I can, oh yeah, like I totally want to work in all my little smarty pants facts when I can. I'm not often in conversations that where I can sort of cough up one of these really interesting nuggets of information. But if I see an opportunity, I'm totally like, what I learned, blah blah blah. So yeah, I might be that annoying person at the party, but.
I'm gonna say, like, this is what I found out. It's better just to make an analogy. You'd be like, this is just like, and then some random tail fact.
All right, I'm going to use that, definitely.
And people are like what now? Oh, let me tell you how that fits. Yeah. Then you get to like, but then again, I am a narcissist, so I love to let people know that I'm intelligent, and I'm not. I just write books. I remember someone said like, who do you ask when you need to know about rocket science, mid-century, healthcare, and like also know about the effectiveness of gunfire and murder at the same time while knowing poisons? A writer, because they know that. Right, they just found it last night.
Yep. Yeah, especially I think if you write mysteries, you probably know all sorts of ways to kill people. Like you know way too much.
Oh my goodness. Okay, as I promised, because we don't do segues here, we're just jumping into. So how do you find your characters and write them and not get tripped up onto using like everyday, like normal, oh my goodness, the word keeps falling out of my head. Modern. The word is modern. So hold on. Redo this question. How do you find your characters and write them without having the modern world influence them?
Yeah, you do not want your, turn of the century people to be talking as if, as if they were talking today. And another, with the first book, when I was writing characters that were 11 and 12 years old, there was sort of this additional burden of not having 11 and 12-year-olds talk like they're just little adults, right? So I think that one of the things that I did was I actually have a book. I should have brought my third book, which is a book of American slang at the turn of the century, which I just read all the way through and just sort of like had all that slang in my head, and then hopefully it would sort of come out at the right time. So I tried to use slang, not that we would use today, but that was sort of appropriate at the time. And I think one of the ways that I hopefully did this well was I read a ton of historical fiction, and I really like this turn of the century America time period. So I've read lots and lots of pieces of fiction based on that. And so I think that sort of influences me, and I try to get sort of into my sort of turn of the century mode and just sort of start thinking, in these sort of overstuffed parlors and the horse-drawn carriages and so forth. And then you just get into like the mindset, and then hopefully you don't start talking about somebody using their cell phone or something. Should be bad.
I don't know how I have massive respect for everyone who does historical fiction. I don't know how you guys do it. I'm like, if I'm writing and then I pick up a cell phone, I'm like, well, that's got to go in. No one doesn't. I can't.
Yeah, you're definitely, historical authors are like definitely gatekeepers of like, no, I mean, and you research these things about like, well, would they have had like a toilet in the hall, or would the toilet would have been an outhouse, or, in the back, would there have been a cesspool or plumbing, and so I actually have a whole book on Victorian plumbing. So I know way too much about
now,
stuff
would there have been a
needs.
cesspool or plumbing? And then I think I know what a cesspool. I would know about a bodice and a hooker, but I don't know anything about a cesspool.
So yeah, I mean, cesspools were like, there'd be a pipe and it would just sort of dump out into a ditch. So not very hygienic, as it turns out. And they learned that the hard way. Yeah, it's not good.
They say that the smell of something often tells your body if you should like have that around you.
Right.
I feel like that was a given. Like that was extra credit for, human survival. Can you smell that? You shouldn't be around it.
Right. If it's putting you off, you should really not like eat it or really be near it. Basic rules.
Okay, now that we've covered cesspools.
All right. And corsets with hookers. Moving on.
Someone asked me why. I'm gonna be so sad. Anyway, moving on to like real modern day writing. So what is your writing process? And normally Jade would ask, are you a pantser? Are you a plotter? I'd love to know that. I also want to know, how do you get through that middle of the book, like way down? Because you're having fun and you get to the middle and you recognize you're near the end and everything has to tie, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is a job.
Right. Well, I had two very different experiences with these books and a different experience with the proposed third book. The first book, I sort of knew the arc of the story. And I was a little bit more of, I was sort of in the middle, half pantser, half plotter. For the second book, for The Sharp Edge of Mercy, I was really more of a pantser. And this was not good because I got to, the 3/4 mark or something, and I realized I don't know how to get my protagonist out of this. And I felt like a real idiot because how could I have the book, the plot evolved over time, but it's like, I didn't really know how I was going to end this. And I sort of freaked out, and then I had to really work through it. And that experience changed me to a total plotter. So the next book is actually all completely outlined. So I guess a traumatic experience changed me from a bit of a pantser to a plotter.
Ah, wait. So it takes trauma to make you applaud it?
It for me, I'm not recommending this to anybody, but I did this. The way that I resolved this was a friend of mine who's a writer calls this plot babble, where you just like open up Microsoft Word and you start talking like you're talking to your best friend or your therapist, like, I'm so screwed. I don't know how to do this. My guy, my protagonist, blah, blah, blah. And you just like do this big stream of consciousness and you just work it out on the page, but you're just like chatting. And it actually worked. And I didn't even believe it would work, and it worked. I was like, thank you. So, but I'm never going through that again. No, I don't recommend, do not do that.
Oh goodness. Okay, so then I have to ask about, although I know who published your books, but I have to ask about your publishing journey. How many did you want to be traditional? Did you want to be self-published? And then how did you finally get your book out there?
So when I was writing my first book, I didn't even really, I didn't understand anything about publishing. And with my first book, I ended up going unagented to She Writes Press, which is a hybrid press, a small press. And for the second book, my agent sent, and then I had an agent for the second book, and she sent it out to lots of big New York publishers. And many of them requested a full manuscript, but it still took a long time. And meanwhile, the pandemic happened while my agent was trying to sell my book. And she said that just everything completely slowed down, and people just were disoriented, didn't had to work at home now, they didn't know, and they weren't reading and all this kind of stuff. So it took a long time, but I ended up going with a very small publisher in New York, Heliotrope Press. So in that one I'm agented for. So she was the one who connected me. So it's been, and I did try to get an agent for the first book, but it's just incredibly hard. I mean, and anybody who's tried to write a book knows that getting an agent is super hard. And then if you get an agent, you might be like, yay, I'm done. But then your agent has to sell your book, which is a whole other series of rejections. And so there's really sort of two mountains to climb if you want to go the agent route. And it's, it's a lot, and you have to be ready for a lot of rejection. Anybody who's writing and wants to get published, if you're not self-publishing, just, it's not, it's full of rejection. I think I might have lost you. I guess I'm the host now. It says I'm the host. So I can do anything, I guess. So I'm going to close this. I hope this is okay.